head and bellowed in answer. "Find out! Find out!" "What, what's that?" stammered Freckles, almost too much bewildered to speak. "I know you're only a bullfrog, but bejabbers, that sounded mightily like speech. Wouldn't you please be saying it over?" The bullfrog cuddled contentedly in the ooze. Then suddenly he lifted his voice, and as an imperative drumbeat rolled it again. "Find out! Find out! Find out!" Freckles had the answer. Something seemed to snap in his brain. There was a wavering flame before his eyes. Then his mind cleared. His head lifted in a new poise, his shoulders squared while his spine straightened. The agony was over. His soul floated free. Freckles came into his birthright. "Before God, I will!" He uttered the oath so impressively that the recording angel never winced as he posted it in the prayer column. Freckles set his hat over the top of one of the locust posts used between trees to hold up the wire, while he fastened the feather securely in the band. Then he started down the line, talking to himself as men who have worked long alone always fall into the habit of doing. "What a fool I've been!" he muttered. "Of course that's what I have to do. There wouldn't likely anybody be doing it for me. Of course I can. What am I a man for? If I was a 4-footed thing of the swamp, maybe I couldn't, but a man can do anything if he's the grit to work hard enough and stick at it, Mr. McLean is always saying, and here's the way I am to do it. He said, too, that there were people that knew everything in the swamp. Of course they've written books. The thing for me to be doing is quit moping and be buying some. Never bought a book in me life, or anything else of much account for that matter. Oh, ain't I glad I didn't waste me money. I'll surely be having enough to get a few. Let me see." Freckles sat on a log, took his pencil and account book, and figured on a back page. He had walked the timberline 10 months. His pay was $30 a month. His board cost him 8. That left $22 a month, and his clothing had cost him very little. At the least he had $200 in the bank. He drew a deep breath and smiled at the sky with satisfaction. "I'll be having a book about all the birds, trees, flowers, butterflies, and yes, by gummy, I'll be having one about the frogs if it takes every cent I have," he promised himself. He put away the account book that was his most cherished possession, caught up his stick, and started down the line. The even tap, tap, and the cheery, gladsome whistle carried far ahead of him the message that Freckles was himself again. He fell into a rapid pace, for he had lost time that morning. When he rounded the last curve he was almost running. There was a chance that the boss might be there for his weekly report. Then, wavering, flickering, darting here and there over the sweet marsh grass, came a large black shadow sweeping so closely before him that for the second time that morning Freckles dodged and sprang back. He had seen some owls and hawks of the swamp that he thought might be classed as large birds, but never anything like this. For 6 feet it spread its big shining wings. Its strong feet could be seen drawn among its feathers. The sun glinted on its sharp, hooked beak. Its eyes glowed, caught the light, and seemed able to pierce the ground at his feet. It cared no more for Freckles than if he had not been there, for it perched on a low tree, while a second later it awkwardly hopped to the trunk of a lightning-riven elm, turned its back, and began searching the blue. Freckles looked just in time to see a second shadow sweep the grass, and another bird, a trifle smaller and not quite so brilliant in the light, slowly sailed down to perch beside the first. Evidently they were mates, for with a queer rolling hop the first comer shivered his bronze wings, sidled up to the new arrival, and gave her a silly little peck on her wing. Then he coquettishly drew away and ogled her. He lifted his head, waddled from her a few steps, awkwardly ambled back, and gave her such a simple sort of kiss on her beak that Freckles burst into a laugh, but clapped his hand over his mouth to stifle the sound. The lover ducked and sidestepped a few feet. He spread his wings and slowly and softly waved them, precisely as if he were fanning his charmer, which was indeed the result he accomplished. Then a wave of uncontrollable tenderness moved him, so he hobbled to his bombardment once more. He faced her squarely this time, and turned his head from side to side with queer little jerks and indiscriminate peckings at her wings and head, and smirkings that really should have been irresistible. She yawned and shuffled away indifferently. Freckles reached up, pulled the quill from his hat, and looking from it to the birds, nodded in settled conviction. "So you're me black angels, ye spalpeens. No wonder you didn't get in. But I'll back you to come in closer than any other birds ever did. You fly higher than I can see. Have you picked the Limberlost for a good thing and come to try it? Well, you can be me chickens if you want to, but I'm blessed if you ain't cool for new ones. Why don't you take this stick for a gun and go skinning a mile?" Freckles broke into an unrestrained laugh, for the bird lover was keen about his courting, while evidently his mate was diffident. When he approached too boisterously, she relieved him of a goodly tuft of feathers and sent him backward in a series of squirmy little jumps that gave the boy an idea of what had happened up sky to send the falling feather across his pathway. "Score one for the lady. I'll be umpiring this," volunteered Freckles. With a ravishing swagger, half lifted wings, and deep guttural hissing, the lover approached again. He suddenly lifted his body, but she coolly rocked forward on the limb, glided gracefully beneath him, and slowly sailed into the Limberlost. He recovered himself and gazed after her in astonishment. Freckles hurried down the trail, shaking with laughter. When he neared the path to the clearing and saw the Boss sitting motionless on the mare that was the pride of his heart, the boy broke into a run. "Oh, Mr. McLean!" he cried. "I hope I haven't kept you waiting very long. And the sun is getting hot. I've been so slow this morning. I could have gone faster, only there were that many things to keep me, and I didn't know you'd be here. I'll hurry after this. I've never had to be given excuses before. The line wasn't down, and there wasn't a sign of trouble. It was other things that were making me late." McLean, smiling on the boy, immediately noticed the difference in him. This flushed, panting, talkative lad was not the same creature who had sought him in despair and bitterness. He watched in wonder as Freckles mopped the perspiration from his forehead and began to laugh. Then, forgetting all his customary reserve with the Boss, the pent-up boyishness in the lad broke forth. With an eloquence of which he never dreamed, he told his story. He talked with such enthusiasm that McLean never took his eyes from his face or shifted in the saddle until he described the strange bird lover, and then the Boss suddenly bent over the pommel and laughed with the boy. Freckles decorated his story with keen appreciation and rare touches of Irish wit and drollery that made it most interesting as well as very funny. It was a first attempt at descriptive narration, with an inborn gift for striking the vital point, a naturalist's dawning enthusiasm for the wonders of the Limberlost, and the welling joy of his newly found happiness. He made McLean see the struggles of the moth and its freshly painted wings, the dainty, brilliant bird mates of different colors, the feathers sliding through the clear air, the palpitant throat and batting eyes of the frog, while his version of the big bird's courtship won for the Boss the best laugh he had enjoyed for years. "They're in the middle of a swamp now," said Freckles. "Do you suppose there's any chance of them staying with me chickens? If they do, they'll be about the queerest I have, but I tell you, sir, I'm finding some plumb good ones. There's a new kind over at the mouth of the creek that uses its wings like feet and walks on all fours. It travels like a threshing machine. There's another, tall as me waist, with a bill a foot long, a neck near 2, not the thickness of me wrist, and an elegant color. He's some blue and gray, touched up with black, white, and brown. The voice of him is such that if he'd be going up and standing beside a tree and crying at it a few times, he could be sawing it off square. I don't know, but it would be a good idea to try him on the gang, sir." McLean laughed. "Those must be blue herons, Freckles," he said. and it doesn't seem possible, but your description of the big black birds sounds like genuine black vultures.